So this week on Staffing Buzz, we're talking about some trends that we've seen around people reevaluating their ATS systems. So we've brought Maurice Fuller with Staffing Tech on to talk about it and share some of his expertise. He's a technology expert and advisor in the staffing world with over 25 years of experience. So he knows what he's talking about. So thank you so much, Maurice, for joining me.
Brooke, thanks for having me.
Thanks. So my first question to you is, why is it that right now so many people are rethinking what they need from their ATS? And did COVID have an impact on this trend, or has it always been something you think you've seen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the pandemic and COVID has definitely had an impact on our industry. I mean, so many companies have moved to remote and virtual operations, and it's really forced them to look at their tech stack and analyze whether it's still serving them well. When we were working within offices, the technology that we used was often sufficient, but when we're working remotely, we have a different set of requirements. And the other thing is, I think there's a growing awareness that the rate of technological change is accelerating, and that we're likely to see 2 or 3 times as much change in technology this decade compared to the previous decade. And that's going to affect how the staffing industry operates and delivers services. And the other thing is, I think many staffing firms are waking up to the fact that they need better technology to make their staff more efficient, particularly in light of the fact that labor has become so difficult to source and procure. We need the best available technology to support our operations.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Like, it's not just your external talent that you have to maintain. You also have to worry about the fact that it's not easy to hire recruiters nowadays either.
Exactly. That's a really good point. And I think that recruiters really want to be able to use the best available technology. And they look for that when they're deciding who they want to work for in staffing. They want to have a glimpse into that tech stack, and they want to understand, how efficient am I going to be able to operate? How efficiently am I going to be able to make placements? Is this easy to use technology that my employer has, or is this cumbersome?
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that people are actually rethinking the idea of like an ATS altogether?
Yes and no. I think you still need a system of record. You need a place where you can track all the different steps of the process and everything that's occurred. But at the same time, there are modern platforms that are emerging, mobile staffing platforms in particular, that are increasingly taking on the role of the ATS. And this is something I didn't see coming, but we have entire staffing firms now that have taken out their ATS, and they're operating entirely just with their mobile staffing platform, and they're doing it very efficiently.
Yep, I see it every day. What are the biggest motivators you hear from people who are looking to move? Like, is it money, functionality, growth in that specific vendor?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, what I encounter a lot is that staffing firms that are on legacy platforms where they have reached constraints, and the legacy platform does not scale to support their business as they're growing. So they're having to add more and more people onto their staff to support that platform. So it's inefficient. Number two, we come across clients that are using technology that's just no longer a good fit, or it was never a good fit for their requirements. And so they're rethinking whether they're using the right ATS for them. The other situation I come across more often than not is that the technology has reached some sort of technology or technical constraint that's holding them back. So some limitation that is not enabling them to progress with their business. And the other thing is, as mobile is becoming really at a forefront of the staffing industry, that is forcing a lot of staffing firms to rethink what they need in their entire tech stack and how they want to best support that.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you seen the vendor landscape change with ATS providers in the past year?
That's a good question. I mean, it's just constantly evolving. First of all, Bullhorn, of course, is the largest player in our industry. They continue to grow and capture more market share, both organically and through acquisitions. At the same time, I would say there's always new players that are emerging in our space. There's always new players that are coming to market with new approaches to supporting staffing firms. And that's been very fascinating to watch, built off of new technology stacks, innovating very quickly. I would also say I'm seeing ATS vendors that are moving into each other's traditional segments that they've been serving. They've been evolving their ATS system to support other segments. And the other trend I would point to is with large enterprise staffing firms, there's a growing shift to Salesforce-based ATS systems. Salesforce being a very enterprise-ready platform to support the requirements of the staffing industry. It's being widely used. I think we'll see more and more of that in the future.
Any advice for people on how to effective and efficiently navigate a growing list of vendors during the evaluation phase? Because you don't want to, there's so many out there, you don't want to just like stay in the evaluation phase for too long and be on like a wild goose chase.
Yeah, look, it's a complex decision to select the right ATS system. And I would say there are many staffing firms that are not equipped to evaluate these solutions efficiently. It's certainly beneficial to bring in an expert, someone like myself that does this all the time and can guide through the process quickly. But if a staffing firm decides to do it on their own, I would strongly encourage them to use a structured process for selecting their tech stack. Analyze your current state, your current technology that you're currently using. Think deeply about that future state of technology that you want to move towards, your needs and your requirements, developing a framework for selecting the right ATS. In some cases, you'll want to develop an RFI or an RFP to support your selection process, engage vendors, participate in demos, perform in-depth technical evaluations of each of the selected vendors. Check your references thoroughly, know who you're partnering up with, do sandbox testing, really get to know the solution as thoroughly as possible, review their implementation plan, then negotiate with vendors. And of course, you want to do a financial analysis and assess the ROI before you commit capital and operating expense towards the new solution.
Interesting. Do you also believe that companies' roadmaps are important as well?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so when you're evaluating a vendor, that vendor may be at an initial stage, but do you think that taking a look and asking them about their roadmap is important as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That's something that I think is not considered enough, but you really want to understand where your vendor is moving with their technology. And so having visibility into that roadmap and knowing how they're going to develop and evolve that product is super, super important. So that's something I always look at is to gain visibility into where they're moving. Now, the ATS vendors, they're looking maybe 6 months out, maybe a year, but the key is making sure that their roadmap aligns with the direction and the trajectory that you want to take your firm.
Of course. Something that we come across a lot in our sales process is people considering building their own. And we know that happens probably even more in the ATS world. So do you see a lot of people who are moving off of the homegrown systems or looking at it now?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of staffing firms using homegrown systems, but I have worked with clients that have moved off of homegrown systems. And generally, I'm surprised when I do work with clients or talk to staffing firms that have homegrown systems, how committed they are to their homegrown approach. And it's usually one of two reasons. It's either to achieve competitive advantages or it's to achieve cost savings. And I've seen some amazing homegrown ATS systems that are definitely providing competitive advantages. But oftentimes when I talk to a company and they're doing it for cost reasons, I'll take a look at the system and it's clear to me that while they may be saving on the ATS system, it's more legacy technology and it's causing inefficiencies in other areas. So while they may be saving money on the technology side, they're paying for it in terms of human inefficiencies and additional compensation to human beings to perform processes that could be done with technology. So generally speaking, I think if you're looking for competitive advantages, I often recommend taking an existing commercial system and then building your competitive advantages on top of that system and working closely with that partner to build in or engineer in those things that are unique to your market. And the right vendor will support you in that regard. Also on the cost savings part, there's so much advancements that has been made in our industry now. Usually, if not most of the time, those cost savings that you want to achieve, you can get that out of existing commercial platforms.
That's a really good point that I think that a lot of people overlook. And maybe that's where someone like yourself is really beneficial because you have that outsider's perspective. But looking at the points where it's like, okay, it's not just about cost, like what is this costing us in human efficiencies? Because that's just something that I always hear about, their tech and the cost and whatnot and maintenance and all that good stuff. But no one ever really brings up the fact that it's costing us, like it's fine with the cost evaluation, but it's actually costing us in efficiencies that our recruiters are having to go through. And I think that might be overlooked a lot. So that was a really good point to make. So
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so on your operating expense, on your P&L, right, you can spend that on a bunch of different things, services, you can spend that on people, that's your largest category, technology, other things. But it's about how much gross margin can you capture, gross margin dollars with the amount of operating expense that you're spending, right? So for every dollar of operating expense, how many dollars of gross margin are you capturing? And whether you're spending that money in OpEx for technology or whether you're spending it on humans, you still need to deliver those services, right? So there's a trade-off there. And I think that technology definitely makes staffing firms more efficient. I've seen this myself over and over and over. And so it's so important to have efficient technology to remain competitive in your market, to capture market share, to grow, to operate efficiently, and to deliver profits to your shareholders.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So let's talk about, when you've decided what platform, what vendor you're going to go with, any advice on how to ensure that you're smoothly rolling that vendor out or that platform out?
Yeah, the implementation is hugely important. And so number one, I mean, it starts with the implementation plan that the vendor puts together, making sure that you're comfortable with that plan. And I would say, number one, a PM, having a PM on your side and a PM on the vendor side or multiple vendors is critically important to make sure that the project is being done properly, because staffing firms get really busy. Everybody has a lot going on. It's so important to have somebody that's supporting that process as you begin the implementation. Number two, you really want to think about change management and how you're going to introduce change into the organization, particular with automation now, and also with mobile platforms too. It really represents sort of a game changer in terms of how we deliver our services and how you do recruiting and how you sell. And I think we need to prepare everybody in the organization very well for those changes in a very positive way. Show them how this benefits them, how this enables them to do what they love best, and how they're going to be able to do their jobs better than ever before. Training is hugely important. Most staffing firms underinvest in training, and then we see inefficient operations that come out of that. So all of that training that you put in upfront pays for itself hugely. Also, the data migration and the conversion is incredibly important to get that right. So this is an opportunity to clean up your data and prepare your data for automation so you can automate correctly. And this also plays into another longer term plan, which is to support artificial intelligence and machine learning as that comes into play down the road as well. And last but not least, I would say moving on to a new platform is a great opportunity to rethink processes. So if you adopt a new ATS platform and you're fixated on this is how we do things, and that was based on some legacy technology, that may not yield the best operational results for you. So take a look at the new platform, think about your processes that you've used in the past that have been effective, but then rethink those processes in light of what the new technology enables you to do and how you can improve upon what you already do really well.
I love all of those answers, especially the last one too. You have so many people, people evaluating TimeSaved, they come in and if it doesn't match their process, they almost check out for a second because they have tunnel vision, and it's hard to break those habits, but sometimes it's a necessary habit to break, especially if you're being inefficient with what you're doing. So I love all of those answers. Any parting advice for your listeners?
Yeah, first of all, I would say it's really easy to fall behind technologically. And then the consequence of that is that your efficiencies drag down. It takes longer to make placements. You're making fewer placements. You're putting in more human effort to make those placements. It's impacting your financial results. I've experienced this firsthand myself. This is why I am so passionate about making sure that we stay up to date with the best available technology. I would also say that selecting the right tech stack is one of the most important business decisions that you'll make. If you select the right tech stack, it will have hugely positive consequences for your business in terms of operating competitively, growing faster, generating financial results for your shareholders. And if you make the wrong decision, it can cause a lot of headwinds and really impact your business. And while there are no perfect solutions out there, there are certain combinations of technologies, certain tech stacks that will definitely deliver better results for everybody. And so I would also say, use a structured, formal process for selecting your tech stack. This isn't something that you can sort of do part-time or sort of haphazardly. It's a very important decision. There's a lot of information and insights that need to go into that decision to get it right. So do it in a deliberate manner so that you make the right decision down the road.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You are so full of knowledge, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us. I'm sure if anybody who's listening wants to reach out to Maurice and pick his brain, and maybe he's can be utilized in your journey if you're looking at different, doesn't have to be just an ATS technology as a whole for your organization. Definitely somebody who knows what you're talking about. You have lots of expertise, years behind you, and knowledge to provide people. So thank you again for coming on and sharing that with us.
Brooke, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.